The sound of tires screeching against gravel shattered the quiet of the Cross estate. Security barely had time to react before the black luxury sedan cut through the gates and stopped inches from the front steps. The driver's door opened first. Then Alexander Cross stepped out. He didn't look angry. That was worse. Inside the mansion, conversations died mid-sentence. A tray clattered to the marble floor. Someone whispered, "He wasn't supposed to be back until Friday." Alexander adjusted his cufflinks slowly, eyes scanning the estate like a battlefield he already knew how to conquer. Betrayal had a way of sharpening his senses. He could still feel it pulsing behind his eyes, the boardroom silence, the forged signatures, the deal signed in his name without his consent. Someone had tried to steal his empire, and they'd failed. He entered without acknowledging anyone. The staff parted instinctively, heads bowed, fear polished into professionalism. Alexander had built that fear carefully over years. It kept things efficient. Then he saw her. She stood near the staircase, holding a cleaning cloth frozen mid-motion. Young, still, watching him. Not with fear, but calculation. That alone caught his attention. Welcome back to Storyverse Vault, my beautiful, amazing Story Vault family. You all have been so supportive, and I promise to always try my best to give you the best stories, as I learn and improve every day. If this is your first time coming across my video, do comment below where you are watching from and hit subscribe to officially join the Story Vault family. Now let's get into today's story. Most people looked away when Alexander Cross entered a room. This woman didn't. Their eyes met. Something unpleasant tightened in his chest. Not desire, recognition. He didn't know from where. "Who is that?" he asked, his voice low, controlled. The house manager cleared his throat. "The new maid, sir. Started 3 days ago. Elena." Elena. The name landed wrong. Alexander took a step closer. She didn't retreat. That was mistake number one. "You," he said. "Come here." She obeyed, footsteps measured, posture calm. Too calm. When she stopped in front of him, she met his gaze directly. "Yes, sir?" Her voice was steady, educated. Alexander studied her face. Dark eyes that didn't flinch, lips pressed together like she was holding something back. People always did around him. Confessions, lies, fear. But her expression wasn't hiding fear. It was hiding intent. "You don't look surprised to see me," he said. "I was told you might return early," Elena replied. A lie. He hadn't told anyone. Interesting. "And you believe everything you're told?" he asked. "No," she said. "Only what makes sense." A few staff members exchanged nervous glances. No one spoke to him like that. Alexander felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Not a smile, but something close. He leaned in just enough to lower his voice. "Be careful," he said. "Sense is expensive in this house." Her eyes flicked briefly to the security cameras. "So I've noticed." That was mistake number 2. Alexander straightened. "You'll be working on this floor now, directly under my supervision." The manager stiffened. "Sir, I didn't ask," Alexander cut in. Then to Elena, "You're mine now." The words hung heavy in the air. Several people froze. Elena didn't. She inhaled once, slow and controlled, then met his gaze again. "With respect, sir, I don't belong to anyone." Silence. Alexander stared at her, studying her reaction. Most people apologized, begged, backtracked. She didn't. Something inside him shifted. "I will make you mine," he said quietly. Not raised, not aggressive, final. Elena felt it then, the weight behind the words. Not lust, not cruelty. Ownership. She nodded once. "Then I suggest you learn who you're claiming." Before he could respond, she stepped back and returned to work. Alexander watched her walk away. He didn't realize his fist had clenched until the pain registered. That night, Alexander didn't sleep. Instead, he sat alone in his private study, screens glowing with confidential reports. The coup attempt was worse than he thought. Shell companies, silent partners. One deal stood out, his first billion-dollar acquisition. Clean, too clean. A notification blinked. Access denied. That had never happened before. Across the hall, Elena finished her shift. She moved quietly, deliberately, her mind racing. She hadn't planned for this. Seeing him up close again, older, sharper, more dangerous, had twisted something deep in her chest. She had memorized his face from newspapers, court transcripts, late-night research sessions fueled by anger. But reality was worse. He wasn't a monster. That made everything harder. She entered the servant corridor and pulled a small flash drive from her pocket, slipping it into a hidden seam in her uniform. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. He's back early. Be careful. She deleted the message instantly. The next morning, Alexander summoned his head of security. I want a full background check on the maid, Elena. Everything. Schools, travel, financial history. Already started, sir, the man replied. There's almost nothing. Alexander's eyes narrowed. Almost? No social media, no digital footprint beyond 6 months, no family listed. A ghost. Alexander leaned back, fingers steepled. Then she's lying, or hiding. Or very good, the guard added carefully. Alexander stood. Keep watching her, discreetly. Elena felt the shift immediately. Security patterns changed, cameras adjusted, doors locked a half-second faster. Good. That meant she was close. Later that afternoon, Alexander found her in the library. She was reorganizing shelves that hadn't been touched in years. You read? He asked. Yes. What? Whatever helps me understand where I am. She reached for a book and paused. You keep your legal texts beside your philosophy. That surprises you? It tells me you justify what you do after the fact. He stepped closer. And what do you think I do? She met his eyes. You convince yourself the damage was necessary. The air thickened. Alexander studied her. You speak like someone who's been damaged. She closed the book slowly. We all have, Mr. Cross. A notification chimed from his watch. He glanced down. Private alert. File located. Sealed case 14. His pulse quickened. Elena saw the change in his expression. That was her cue. If you're looking for answers, she said softly, you should start with the men who never made it out of your rise. Alexander looked up sharply. What did you say? She turned to face him fully now. Your first billion didn't come from brilliance. It came from silence. The room seemed to tilt. Explain, he demanded. Not yet, Elena said, but you should know this. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Your company buried a man alive to make you rich. Alexander felt something crack, not around him, but inside him. That's impossible, he said. Elena didn't argue. She just watched him. Alexander stormed into his study and opened the sealed file. Names, dates, court transcripts. One line froze his blood. Beneficiary, Alexander Cross. Approval method, proxy signature. He felt sick. Footsteps behind him. Elena stood in the doorway. I didn't come here to be your maid, she said quietly. I came because you were the last name on the file. Alexander turned slowly. For the first time, the power in the room wasn't his. Alexander Cross did not move. The words on the screen burned into his vision, but his mind refused to process them. Proxy signature, beneficiary, his name, attached to a conviction he had never acknowledged, a man he did not remember destroying. Elena stood in the doorway, silent, watching him absorb the fracture in his reality. You're lying, Alexander said finally. His voice was calm, but something brittle ran beneath it. If this were true, I would remember. Elena stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The soft click echoed like a verdict. That's the thing about power, she replied. It insulates you from memory. Alexander turned toward her slowly. You broke into my systems. No, she said. Your systems were designed to forget. He laughed once, short, sharp. You expect me to believe my entire empire is built on a mistake? Not a mistake, Elena corrected. A choice. She crossed the room, careful not to get too close. Alexander noticed that, how she always measured distance, exits, angles. This wasn't instinct. It was training. You didn't sign the order, she continued, but you benefited from it. That was enough. Alexander slammed his hand onto the desk. Enough for who? For the people who needed a fall guy, she answered, and for the man who lost everything so you could gain leverage. Silence stretched. Alexander exhaled slowly, forcing control back into his posture. Why are you here? Elena met his gaze. Because that man died in prison last year, and his case was never reopened. Something flickered across Alexander's face. Not guilt yet, but discomfort. Then why now? Because I found proof, she said. And because every path led back to you. He stared at her, searching for cracks. You expect me to believe you walked into my house as a maid just to tell me this? No, Elena said. I walked in to see if you were the kind of man who deserved to know. That landed harder than any accusation. Alexander straightened. And your verdict? She hesitated, just a fraction. I haven't decided. From that moment on, the estate felt smaller. Alexander increased security, not to trap Elena, but to contain the growing threat he couldn't yet name. Files disappeared from archives. Old contacts stopped returning calls. Someone was watching his movements. He didn't sleep. Instead, he studied Elena. She worked efficiently, avoided unnecessary interaction, never lingered in one place too long. She never used her phone near cameras, never repeated routines. One evening, he tested her. He ordered her into the study again. Sit, he said. She did. You speak like someone educated, he observed, yet you scrub floors for a living. Observation isn't ownership, she replied. Answer the question. I learned early that intelligence doesn't protect you, Elena said. It only makes you a target. Alexander leaned forward. Who trained you? She met his gaze. Someone who lost everything because no one listened. That answer hit closer to the truth than he liked. You're not afraid of me, he said. I'm not afraid of what you are, she replied. I'm afraid of what you might choose. For the first time since his return, Alexander didn't have a response. That night, the attack came quietly. A security alert triggered in the West Wing, motion without identification. Alexander moved fast, instincts honed over years of threats. He reached the corridor just as a masked figure lunged from the shadows. The shot rang out before Alexander could react. The intruder collapsed. Elena stood behind Alexander, holding the gun with steady hands. I told you they would come, she said. Alexander turned slowly. You were armed. Yes. You brought a weapon into my house. He studied her in the low light. You could have let him kill me. Yes. Why didn't you? Elena's jaw tightened. Because then the truth would have stayed buried. Alexander swallowed. What do you want? She looked at him fully now. Justice. And if justice costs me everything? Then you'll finally know what it feels like, she said softly. To lose something you didn't know you were risking. That night, Alexander accessed every sealed file tied to his early rise. One by one, the pattern emerged. Proxy approvals, quiet settlements, men erased for convenience, and always, his name at the top, not as executioner, as beneficiary. If you're still watching, you already feel where this is going. Drop a like if you want justice to win, and stay with us because the truth is only getting sharper. The next morning, Elena was gone. Her room was empty. No belongings, no trace. Panic surged through Alexander before he could stop it. He ordered a lockdown. Find her? Hours passed. Then a message appeared on his private terminal. From E. They know you're looking. If you want answers, don't follow. Trust me, for once. Alexander stared at the screen. Trust. The word felt foreign, but he obeyed. That evening, Elena returned, blood on her sleeve. Alexander stood instantly. You're hurt. It's not mine, she said. Security moved in. She raised a hand. No, this stays between us. Alexander hesitated, then waved them off. She sat, finally allowing herself to breathe. They tried to take the evidence, she said. Someone inside your system tipped them off. Alexander's expression darkened. Then it's already begun. Elena met his gaze. Now you understand why I said you don't own this. He nodded slowly. You were never the maid. No, she agreed. I was the reckoning. Alexander leaned back, realization settling in like gravity. What happens next? He asked. Elena stood. Now you choose. Choose what? She stepped closer, voice low. Whether you protect your empire or tell the truth and burn it down. Alexander opened his mouth to answer, and the study doors burst open. Security rushed in, faces pale. Sir, one said urgently, the board has called an emergency vote. Alexander's blood ran cold. For what? The guard swallowed. To remove you, effective immediately. Elena's eyes locked onto his. They're moving faster than expected, she said. Alexander straightened, fire igniting behind his eyes. Then so am I. He turned to her. If I fall, I take them with me. Elena hesitated, then nodded. Good, because I already sent the first file to the press. Alexander froze. You what? She met his stare without flinching. You said you wanted justice. The notification alert chimed. Breaking news. Alexander looked at the screen. His world began to collapse. The first headline hit before Alexander could even stand. Cross Industries linked to wrongful conviction. The second followed seconds later. Sealed files suggest CEO benefited from false imprisonment. The room seemed to close in on him. Alexander Cross had faced hostile takeovers, public scandals, and threats that would have crushed lesser men. But this was different. This wasn't an attack on his company. This was an attack on his name. Elena stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the screen. You leaked it, Alexander said, voice low. I released it, she corrected. There's a difference. He turned to her sharply. You said we'd decide together. And you said you'd move fast, she replied. They were minutes away from burying this again. The notification feed exploded. Stock prices plummeted. Analysts speculated. Former partners. Alexander felt the floor tilt beneath him. Security, he snapped. Lockdown communications. I want legal PR. Everyone, now. They won't help you, Elena said. He paused. What? They'll help themselves, she continued. By the end of the day, they'll pretend they never knew you. As if summoned by her words, Alexander's phone rang. Board member number 1. He answered. You're already too late. The voice on the other end was cold. Step down, Alexander, publicly. We'll handle the rest. You forged my authority, Alexander shot back. You used my name. And you let us, the man replied. You enjoyed the results. Don't pretend this wasn't convenient. The line went dead. Alexander lowered the phone slowly. For the first time, anger wasn't his dominant emotion. Fear was. Outside the estate, cameras gathered like vultures. Elena watched from an upper window as reporters shouted questions into the void. "They'll come for me next," she said quietly. Alexander looked at her. "They already tried." She nodded. "This time they won't miss." Alexander made a decision. "Pack," he said. "We're leaving." Elena frowned. "Running." "Repositioning," he replied. "If they want control, they'll have to chase it." She studied him for a moment, searching for deception. Then she nodded. 10 minutes. The drive was silent. Alexander's phone buzzed non-stop. Resignations, threats, warnings. Allies evaporated faster than he could track them. Finally, he broke the silence. "You knew this would destroy me," he said. "Yes." "And you did it anyway." "Yes." He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Why stay?" Elena turned toward him. "Because destruction isn't the same as justice." That answer hit deeper than accusation. They stopped at an abandoned safe house Alexander hadn't used in years. Concrete walls, no cameras, no staff, just truth. Elena pulled a folder from her bag and placed it on the table. "This is everything," she said. "Documents, witness statements, names." Alexander flipped through the pages, his jaw tightening with each revelation. "This goes beyond the conviction," he said. "This is systemic." "Yes," Elena replied. "And you were the crown jewel." He looked up sharply. "I didn't order this." "No," she agreed. "But you never asked how the miracle happened." The words cut clean. Alexander leaned back, running a hand over his face. "You hate me." Elena shook her head. "If I hated you, you'd already be finished." "Then what is this?" She hesitated. "This is me deciding whether you're worth saving." The weight of that statement settled heavy between them. Hours later, the news cycle turned brutal. Former employees came forward. Old settlements resurfaced. A prosecutor announced a preliminary investigation. Alexander watched it unfold in silence. Then his phone buzzed again. "Unknown number," he answered. "You should have stayed quiet," a voice said. "Now you've made this personal." Alexander's eyes flicked to Elena. "Who is this?" he demanded. "You know who it is," the voice replied. "The man who made you." The call ended. Elena inhaled sharply. "That wasn't the board." "No," Alexander said. "That was the architect." Night fell. The safe house lights flickered. Elena moved to the window. "They found us." Alexander stood instantly. "How many?" "Enough." A gunshot shattered the glass. They moved at the same time. Alexander grabbed a weapon from the wall, safe. Elena covered the rear exit. The first attacker breached the door, then another. Shots rang out clean, controlled. Alexander realized then how dangerous Elena truly was. Not reckless, precise. They escaped through the underground passage just as the safe house went dark. Breathing hard, Elena leaned against the concrete wall. "This ends tonight," she said. Alexander nodded. "Then we finish it." They emerged into the city just as dawn broke. Alexander's face was everywhere now, on screens, headlines, accusations. He was no longer a king. He was prey. Elena stopped walking. "What?" Alexander asked. She turned to face him. "There's something you still don't know." He tensed. "Tell me." "The man who was convicted," she said slowly. "He wasn't just collateral." Alexander felt his chest tighten. "He was my father," Elena said. The world seemed to stop. Alexander opened his mouth, but no words came. "He refused to sign off on the deal," she continued. "He said it would destroy lives." Her voice didn't shake. That was worse. "They framed him. He died in prison, believing no one cared." Alexander swallowed hard. "I didn't know." "I know," she said. "That's why this hurts." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Alexander spoke. "If I could trade everything—" "You can't," Elena interrupted. But you can decide what happens next. He met her gaze. Then I'll testify. Her eyes widened. That will end you. Yes, he said, but it might give him his name back. Elena studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. They reached the courthouse steps just as sirens wailed in the distance. Cameras swung toward them. Alexander took a breath. I will speak, he said. Elena stopped him with a hand on his arm. One condition. Anything. If they try to bury this again, she said, you don't protect me. He frowned. What are you saying? You protect the truth, she replied, even if it costs me. Alexander shook his head. I won't lose you too. Elena's expression softened for the first time. You already did, a long time ago. She stepped back. Then security vehicles screeched to a halt. Armed officers poured out. Alexander Cross, one shouted. You are under arrest. Alexander raised his hand slowly. Elena watched as they cuffed him. Their eyes met one last time. This isn't over, he said. She whispered, no, it's just beginning. As he was pulled away, Elena's phone buzzed. A message appeared. From unknown. You should have taken the deal. Now both of you will pay. Elena looked up, fear flickering across her face for the first time. The holding cell smelled like disinfectant and old regret. Alexander Cross sat alone on the narrow bench, hands cuffed in front of him, suit jacket folded beside him like a relic from another life. The noise of the station faded in and out, phones ringing, doors slamming, voices arguing, but none of it reached him fully. For the first time in his adult life, no one was waiting for his orders. No assistants, no lawyers, no shield. Just the truth, pressing in from all sides. He closed his eyes and saw Elena's face when they arrested him. Not anger, not satisfaction. Fear. That frightened him more than the cuffs. Elena didn't leave the courthouse. She stood across the street, hood pulled low, watching the media frenzy swell like a storm. Alexander's name rolled endlessly across screens. Commentators debated his guilt. Protesters gathered. Some shouted for justice. Others shouted for blood. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown. Last chance. Walk away. Or you become collateral too. She typed nothing, deleted the message, turned the phone off. Then she walked. Alexander's interrogation lasted hours. They asked about the deal, the proxy approvals, the shell companies, names he hadn't spoken aloud in years. He answered everything. At first, the officers thought it was strategy, a controlled confession to limit damage. Then they realized he wasn't negotiating. He was dismantling himself. I benefited, Alexander said quietly. Even if I didn't authorize the act, I allowed the outcome to stand. I built on it. That makes me responsible. The room went silent. One of the detectives leaned back. You understand this won't save you? Alexander nodded. I'm not trying to be saved. Across the city, Elena met with the one journalist she trusted. An older woman, sharp eyes, no corporate sponsor. This ends careers, the journalist warned. It should, Elena replied. It already ended lives. She handed over the final folder, the one she hadn't shown Alexander. Inside were names that went beyond Cross Industries. Judges, regulators, politicians. A system. The journalist exhaled slowly. Once this runs, there's no stopping it. Elena nodded. That's the point. The story broke at midnight. Full corruption network, exposed CEO, confesses, others implicated. Arrests followed within hours. The architect, the voice on the phone, was detained, trying to flee the country. For the first time since her father's conviction, Elena slept. Weeks passed. Alexander was denied bail. In his cell, stripped of privilege and noise, something unexpected happened. He felt lighter. The weight he hadn't known he carried years of justification. Rationalization, willful blindness began to lift. One afternoon, a guard stopped at his cell. "You have a visitor." Alexander's heart stuttered. Elena stepped inside the room moments later. No uniform, no disguise. Just her. They stared at each other through the glass. "I didn't think you'd come," Alexander said. "I didn't think you'd survive this," she replied. He smiled faintly. "Still here." Silence stretched. Finally, Alexander spoke. "I meant it. When I said I'd testify, I would have done it even without you." "I know," Elena said. "That's why I'm here." She slid a document toward him. "My father's name has been cleared," she said. "Officially." Alexander's breath caught. "I'm glad." She studied his face. "You lost everything." "Yes." "Do you regret it?" He shook his head. "I regret not losing it sooner." Her expression softened. The trial was swift, brutal. Alexander didn't fight the charges. He testified against everyone. Former allies avoided his eyes. Some cursed him, others begged. He spoke anyway. When sentencing came, the courtroom was silent. Years in prison, assets seized, empire dissolved. Alexander nodded as if confirming something he'd already accepted. Months later, Elena stood at a small gravesite. A new headstone bore her father's real name. She placed her hand against the cool stone and whispered, "It's done." Behind her, footsteps approached. She didn't turn. "I didn't expect you," she said. "I was released this morning," Alexander replied. She turned, then surprised. "Released?" "Time served, cooperation, and a lot of powerful people wanting this to be over." He shrugged. "I don't get my life back, but I get a chance to live a different one." They stood in silence. Finally, Elena spoke. "I'm leaving the city." Alexander nodded. "I assumed you would." She hesitated. "You once said you'd make me yours." He smiled sadly. "I was wrong." She raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "I thought power meant claiming," he said. "I learned too late it means choosing and letting go." She studied him, searching for remnants of the man who'd once terrified a room by entering it. She found none. "Goodbye, Alexander." "Goodbye, Elena." She walked away. He didn't stop her. Years later, a small nonprofit appeared quietly in the news. Founded by a former CEO, dedicated to reopening wrongful convictions. No interviews, no speeches, just work. One afternoon, a letter arrived at the office. No return address. Inside was a single line. "You didn't make me yours. You made yourself accountable." That mattered. Alexander folded the note carefully and placed it in his desk. For the first time in his life, that was enough. If this story moved you, if it made you question power, justice, or redemption, subscribe for more stories like this, like the video, and tell us in the comments. Do you believe redemption should cost everything?